Welcome back to Life's Chillin'. My name is Avital, and this week's Parshat is Parshat Chukat. Parshat Chukat is a Parsha that is really an emotional Parsha, and specifically it deals a lot with grief and sadness. The Parsha opens up with teaching us about a chok. So a chok is a related word to Chukat, the name of the Parsha, and a chok or chukim are sort of the laws that the Torah prescribes, that God tells the Jews, you should follow this, but that don't make sense to us. It's called a chok. And the Parsha opens up with talking about the red heifer, or the red cow that would be used to purify those who had become ritually impure by coming into contact with the dead. So it starts on this sort of sad, already talking about death note, and that does continue throughout the Parsha because sort of the next main event is that Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, dies. And the commentators have suggested that it was sort of in Miriam's merit that the Jewish people had water while they were in the desert. And now that she dies, the Jewish people once again, as they have been doing recently quite a bit, they cry out to Moses and they say, "If only we had perished as our brethren perished before Hashem. Why have you brought the congregation of Hashem to this wilderness to die there?" And then they also continue saying that there is no water to drink. So Miriam dies, and the next interaction that we see is the Jewish people upset with Moses, again, who is in this period of mourning, that there is no water to drink. And God tells Moses to speak to this rock and water will flow from it. And it's a pretty famous story. Moses, instead of speaking to the rock, strikes the rock. The rock does gush with water. But because of this, God lets Moses know that Moses is not going to enter the land of Canaan, now the land of Israel, with the Jewish people, that he too will die in the desert. Not only him, but also Aaron. And so that becomes another loss and another thing that he is mourning. And then after that, Aaron dies as well. And so it is a Parsha filled with a lot of difficulty, a lot of death, and a lot of emotions. And if we go back to the name of the Parsha, to Chukat, I heard this really beautiful idea by Hannah Weisberg. I have her book here. It's called Shabbat Delights, and she talks about the Parsha every week. And she was talking about how maybe a way of us understanding what is a chok, what are chukim, is to think about it like this. She gave this example. A husband and a wife are arguing. They both made their positions clear, and then they're not really getting anywhere. And the wife says something to the effect of, "Well, would you do it for me?" And the husband agrees. And it's like, it's not something that there was nothing logical about, like, would you do it for me? They went through the logical points. It was something that you do out of an emotion. It was an emotional response. You do it out of dedication to somebody, out of the willingness to serve somebody. Again, something that seems perfectly illogical, but it's an emotional response. And that's a use of emotion in this week's Parsha, following a chukim, following these ordinances by God out of pure devotion to God without understanding them, is an example of leading with emotion in a good way. Learning about chukim is maybe the sole good use of leading with our emotions in this Parsha. Because the other instance is the Jewish people crying out once again in fear that they don't have water in the desert, is the Jewish people allowing themselves to be led by fear and by their emotions in not a positive way. Because if you think about it, if we were using our logical, rational minds, the Jewish people have time and time again been in this position where they were afraid they wouldn't have water, they were afraid they wouldn't have food, they were afraid they wouldn't have enough, and God has never let them down. And yet, here once again, in the aftermath of Miriam's death, they are afraid that they are not going to have water. They're also maybe in this state of mourning, and they're in this state where their minds are not being the most logical, the most rational, and it leads them to complain to Moses yet again, "Where is our water?" They're leading with their fears rather than their logic. And similarly, in a sense, think about the state that Moses must have been in. the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, he talked about in a podcast I listened to about Parshat Chukat, he said something to the effect of that Moses was not in his usual state of mind. Moses was mourning when he struck this rock rather than speaking to it. All of his normal faculties were maybe not there and not functioning as they usually are firing. And here his sister, who had been his rock for so long, had just died. And what's the people's response? Not, oh, Moses, we're so sorry. Oh, what can we do for you? But Moses, where is our water? And you could imagine sort of this buildup of emotions that maybe his head's not in the right space and he strikes this rock. Moses, too, was maybe leading with emotions or not thinking as clearly in this moment when he went ahead and struck the rock rather than speaking to it. There was so much going on, and he was leading by emotions, and it led to, again, this negative outcome. So we can see from the Parsha that to dedicate ourselves to God, or like in the example that Hannah Weisberg spoke about in our relationships, to use this sort of, to lead with emotions to create Shalom Bayit, those can be really beautiful things, and those can be ways that leading with emotion is beneficial to us. But just as it's beneficial to us, it also could be detrimental to us when we're not maybe in the right headspace and we start making decisions based off of that, or when we're leading with fear like the Jewish people were rather than using our logic. We have to be really cautious about leading and making decisions that are purely based off of our emotions and what we're feeling. And so I hope that we can all keep that in mind. I think it's a really powerful lesson we can take away from Parshat Chukat. And I wish you all a wonderful week and a Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to speaking with you next time.